I mean, life is full of just so many surprises. You cannot really predict how things are going to happen for you.
Execution actually matters a lot.
My wife gets pregnant, and she's pregnant with twins. Her mother is diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and dies painfully over the next year. You can't be too attached to any one thing. Be willing to change. I got run down at one time by a minivan in the street. I mean, I've got a pin in my leg, I broke my neck. But what are you going to do? You just got to get back to being operational, right?
Yeah.
Everybody here is working to do something they think is good.
Hey everyone, this is my third podcast here in the network school, and today we have Chris with us. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, okay. I'm Christopher Treble, and I'm not sure how much of an explanation you want. I'm from California, originally from England, and I'm here to find out about network school and to see what all the current class is up to in terms of changing the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's like we had a great chat today in the morning, like during the breakfast, and then it's like so interesting to watch you. I think you are the most curious person I've ever met in my life, and then all the folks who are around here as well. I just love it how you are basically so curious around everything, and then it actually motivates me to keep on going and doing something that I am. So I would like to ask you a bit about your initial days, how you started with your college, and then your first job, things like that. If you would like to share.
Okay, so you want to begin at the beginning.
Absolutely.
Okay, so but you say you want to start at college. You don't want to hear about my childhood particularly.
You can start with their childhood.
Well, maybe it gets too long. So I have had a very fortunate life, and it began, because you can tell I'm really getting up there, it began in 1940, as the Second World War was starting, so I entered on this life of momentous time, and I probably shouldn't go through too much of that, but it does affect who you are, okay? So I had big influences in my early life. I did not meet my father till I was 6, because he was away in the Second World War in Egypt. And so I was sort of a mother's boy. My mother was very sweet to me, looked after me very carefully. And so I probably was a bit of a gentle person growing up, okay? Then when I was a teenager, I spent a lot of time with an aunt who had lived in the USA, okay? So that was partly what got me taste for the USA. I would visit her, and she would get care packages from the USA. She'd worked in the USA, so we'd get...
So your initial life, you started in the early days were in England, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And how long were you in England?
Well, I was in England until I was 18, and I went through a very traditional, so I say traditional upbringing. I mean, I went to an all-boys school.
Okay.
We wore uniforms.
It's the same for all of us.
Yeah.
I think to some extent it's the same right now as well. Like in India, we all have proper uniforms.
But in the US, they don't wear typically. Well, some private schools wear uniforms, but typically most schools, public schools, do not. What they call the state schools don't have uniforms. So it's people go to school in very, very casual.
I've seen some movies. Yeah,
right. So that's quite different. So it's difficult to describe. England was a very grey place when I was growing up. There were a lot of bomb sites still. A lot of soot, a lot of everything was dark and grey. And it was also a very class-conscious place. I know in India, obviously, you have a lot of classes in society, Brahmins and them down. And England obviously didn't have religious categories, but, well, maybe we did, but it was almost as if you were supposed to do what your father did. You weren't supposed to create your own life.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very restrictive. I did not like that. So I managed to get to the USA. My first try, I didn't succeed. I had a little bit too much of the good life, right? But then when I went back to England, I finally got my life together. I got my undergraduate degree in England, and then I went to business school at Stanford, and I stayed there from there.
Got it.
Yeah.
So like when was this? Which year when you like graduated?
I graduated from business school in 1968. Okay, and I was actually so I was at that point I was 28, right? So I mean, I was I'd had these really bad years in between when I screwed up first coming to the US. I had 4 or 5 years where I was just lost in the wilderness, right?
Okay.
And so I was a bit late. So I think the business school experience was very good for me. I was very fortunate to get in there, but I was quite a bit older than most of the other people there because it was different than business school classes today. Back then, because they had the Vietnam War going on, a lot of people were going to, stay in university as long as they could to avoid having to go to war, right? So, so most of them were like, they'd be straight out of undergraduate work going to graduate school. So they'd be 22, 23. I was 28, 29, so. So it was a little bit different like that. But then I went out. I got married in 1967. And
then you graduated in 68.
Graduated in 68.
Okay. So you met her in your college or?
No, I'd actually met my wife, believe it or not, when I first came to the US when I was 18. I'd had a date with her because I met her brother. And then purely by chance, when I came back one summer, I ran into her brother and he invited me to a party and I met my should-be wife again, and we hit it off.
Okay.
Hit it off the second time around. So these are I mean, life is full of just so many surprises.
So when did you like meet her again? Like first of all, you met her when you were 18 and went to the US, and then second time when
like in 1965, I think I managed to work out an exchange arrangement for jobs with an economics association. So you went and I was in not a very attractive place in Manchester, okay? And so you would get local people to offer jobs for the summer, and then you would go to this meeting where you would exchange jobs, okay? So, who wants to go to Manchester? Not many people, at least not then. Maybe it's more exciting now. And so I was able to get a job back in Cleveland where I had worked before.
Okay.
And so in the end, I wound up, I told you, I'm mama's boy. Like, my job was actually working in a clothing factory, okay? And it was hot and steamy like it is here in the summer. It was noisy, hot and steamy.
In the US?
In the US, yes. This is in Ohio. It gets very hot in the summer, okay? Very cold in the winter, very hot in the summer. And so I wound up then thinking, okay, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I'm English and I'm kind of young, so I can go work in a men's clothing store. So I went to a clothing store in the mall and asked them to give me a job. They gave me a job, $100 a week, which was quite a lot of money back then. And one day, my wife's name was Nancy. Her brother walks in the store, and he just got married, and he was heading off for Europe 2 days later on his honeymoon, and he was going to have a party that night. He invites me to the party.
Oh, okay.
So
you were 25.
I was
25 or 26 years old?
That was 25, yeah. And then so I was still back in England doing my degree, just going to US for the summer, but my wife-to-be and I corresponded, and so.
Yeah, that's a very interesting story.
Yeah. So if he hadn't come into the store or I hadn't been working there, I wouldn't be married to that lady today, right? I mean, this is why when I talk with you guys in the morning, I say, you cannot really predict how things are going to happen for you. I mean, I think you have to have your belief in yourself. You have to have an idea of what you want to do, but then you have to be willing to be open to
absolutely
the things happening,
Yeah, I think at times it's very tough but then you just have to like keep going with the flow, and then you uh, it has happened with me a lot of times as well. Like I get stuck at points, and then like it's something like if you keep manifesting something, it actually happens. So like it has happened with me a lot, and then uh, it works most of the times. So like
Yeah, because sometimes it works in a way you don't expect. You wind up finding something completely different than what you thought,
absolutely, yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And actually, of course, because you're Indian, I have to say this goes back into really Indian philosophy, doesn't it? Where you have I forget the name, but you have the good guys fight the bad guys, and the good guys win, and the bad guys are wiped out. And then the good guys go. This is like the Monkey Kingdom story, right? Where you go to the next. And then the bad guys are it's like it flips around, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I forget the exact myth or story, foundation, but like that something, isn't it?
like it's Mahabharata, like the mythology, or
Yes, it's in, I remember, I mean, it's not like the Ramayana, but, although even the Ramayana, right, has all kinds of twists to it, right?
absolutely.
So it is a good, I mean, even if you're not religious, it's a good story of life, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. There is much more to learn from all of this scriptures, and then like how was life after college? You graduated from Harvard Business School, and then
No, Stanford, not Harvard.
oh, sorry.
No. Remember, that's the Stanford of the East Coast.
Okay.
Is Harvard, right? Right.
Okay.
So, well, I mean, it was, what should I say? At first, it went the way I thought it would. I had a good degree, so I got a good job with Chrysler Corporation. We moved to Detroit, which actually at that time was still a very, it was a really nice place. There was a lot of good things there.
Okay.
But later they had a lot of other troubles. So it was like I was going to work, I was coming home, we had a baby, we had a little cat, little black, it was like very domestic and nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then when I was at Chrysler, they had a real estate subsidiary, and I wound up working there. And all of a sudden, I got really excited. I thought, this is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that was what I wanted to focus on. And then I took a job with a real estate investment company out in San Francisco because I really wanted to get back to California.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And so that set it off. So I worked for that company for a few years. But I was meeting people who were very entrepreneurial. We were financing people who were doing real estate projects, right? And so it's like, oh, I really like what they're doing, okay? And I wasn't ready yet to quite make the move, but the company was going through some difficulties, and I was actually asked to leave.
Okay.
Okay, so
which year was this?
Pardon?
Which year was this?
This was like 1976. Okay.
Okay.
So I worked there maybe 5 or 6. Maybe 5, 6 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was still very naive. I did not negotiate any departure package. It was just like, oh, they don't want me, I'm out of here, okay?
Yeah.
But I would say again, maybe it wasn't a good time to do that because right then my wife gets pregnant, and she's pregnant with twins. Her mother is diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and dies painfully over the next year. And so it was like, oh, now I'm out here. I don't have a job. I'm not making any money. I've got to do something to support my family. So, that's how it started.
It was like when you were 38, 37, 36?
Well, yeah, 36, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a late bloomer. You're starting a lot earlier, right?
Yeah, like things have changed a lot because of the internet, I guess. I think that would be one of the reasons. Yeah, and then how was life after 36? Like, as you mentioned, like, yeah.
Well, so then you get, I mean, this is something that you guys have coming up, right? I mean, maybe somewhat different for some people, but you get into your midlife stride, okay? And maybe not everybody gets married, maybe not everybody has children. A lot of people get married, have children, okay? So for me, it was like my life became work and family because I was working very hard. So I wasn't going out playing poker in the evening with the guys. I wasn't playing golf. It was just like work, family, work, family. And I was very happy doing that, right? It was good. It creates some strain if you're very entrepreneurial, a family arrangement, because you're typically working very hard. You're putting your business maybe ahead of your family is the truth, okay? That creates a little bit of strain, but those are things you deal with, right? And then at that point also you then start to realize, wow, I'm here, I've got a bit of a hole, and so now I've got to get really focused, and you have to get focused mentally and physically, right? Both. So at that point, in my life, I actually started really exercising. I'd go exercise maybe not every morning, like 5 days a week. I'd go exercise. Yeah. So I'd go at 7, do my workout, go to shower, go to work, right? And that actually gets you really set for the day, which I think is one of the things they're trying to do with
absolutely with the burn here. Yeah,
because it gets you the blood circulating through your brain, right?
Yeah,
it's really but the other thing that's really important about that, I think, is when you're in a business, you're responsible to other people there, your customers or your employees, whatever it may be. And with your family, your responsibility is to them. It's not to you. You have to treat your family as more important than you are, right? So, so basically, I think the workout is also, it's like your time for yourself. You just do what you're told. You don't have to be using intellectual capital, right? You just do what you're told.
Absolutely.
So that's a fantastic thing to be doing. So that was my pattern. And you have, like, if you're raising kids, you have 25 years of that, right? So that takes you from 35 to 50, right? Okay. And maybe today longer than that.
Yeah.
But it's a good experience, and you have a lot of, I mean, you have frustrating times, but you have really good times. And I think the other thing then, but it's also the same discipline in your business. If you are focused and working your brain out as well as your body out, you go through all these things that happen maybe when you least expect them. But that gives you the ability to, what should we say, to ride the wave.
Yeah.
Right? And that's really important, I think.
Like sudden medical challenges or...
I got run down at one time by a minivan in the street. I mean, I got a pin in my leg, it broke my neck.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I'm out of commission. Well, I mean, not like that. I mean, I had this neck brace on. Nothing worse than neck brace because your hair, it just irritates. It's itchy all the time. And, but what are you going to do? You just got to get back to being operational, right? We had, in my business, we had one of my partners at one point got divorced, right? Well, he was useless then. I mean, so he said, go away. It came back, I don't know, 6 months or a year later. He continued to be a partner, but it was just, there was no point in having him being in the dysfunctional place he was. So it was like, go away, get well, then come back. So you have those things, but that puts a burden then on everybody else, right? Because, I don't know.
Yeah, in business, it's usually like you'll have to give all your mind and soul to it, and then it actually gets very challenging if you have some all of these issues in life. It's like that
can be. But there are also issues in the business. So I would say the other thing I would say that maybe I pontificate, I would say. But I think it's very difficult to go into business by yourself. Very important to find partners, somebody who complements you in various ways. And to me, that always means you've got to have an odd number of founders.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
I mentioned that, right? Yeah. Because what should we say? I mean, you've got to be compatible with your partners, but you're never completely compatible, right? I mean,
human beings are complex.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very complex. Yeah. And so you always need somebody with a different point of view and different capabilities. Like, you're a very creative guy. I don't know if you're any good at bookkeeping, accounting, controlling expenses. I think you're a good marketing guy, right? So maybe you're the marketing guy, a creative guy, but you still need somebody to be doing the financial end of things.
Absolutely.
And maybe somebody, depending on what you're starting, somebody handles personnel things or the sort of executive day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
Right? I mean...
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? So I think you've got to... you can't just have an idea that's a great idea. You've got to figure how you build your...
Yeah, execution actually matters a lot. And that... Yeah. And then, like, would you like to discuss how, because that was kind of a inflection point, or like kind of a low point, you can say, when you were 36, and then when you like suddenly lost your job, of course, because you were not expecting it.
Right.
And then kind of everything around you was also very tough, but then you kind of took that challenge, and then how you like I would like...
I was in a way I was totally panicked.
Okay.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've now got, at this point, a wife and 2 children who I'm supposed to be supporting, because this is very traditional. My wife was not working, she was raising the kids. So I said, okay, I have to make some immediate money.
Yep.
How do I make some immediate money, right? Mm-hmm. So that was doing what, I don't know if you use the term elsewhere, but in the US it'd be called brokerage, okay? So because, okay. Mm-hmm. So I knew some people who, some of these entrepreneurs I knew, they had things where they would need investors. Mm-hmm. And I also knew or figured I could find investors for them because I had good financial network.
Okay.
And some of it was even with my old employer. I knew there were a couple of people who needed to renegotiate things with my old employers. Okay, so I did something. But the first thing I did, which I always tell people, this is kind of crazy, the first deal I got together, because in California, to be able to, anybody can broker, okay?
But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but if I want to be able to collect a fee and somebody doesn't want to pay, I can't collect unless I'm licensed.
Okay, yeah.
And I wasn't licensed because I wasn't planning to be a broker. I just left that. So the first thing I did, the buyer and the seller squeezed the price down to where, there's no room for a brokerage commission.
Okay.
Right? So I did my first transaction and did not get paid. Okay? But I said, I have to do a transaction because I have to show I can do something. Okay? So I did the first one for nothing. Okay. And then I got a couple I did that covered income for a while. And then out of the blue, and then I'd actually, I had one of my former clients who was shopping center guy. I went out with him and he put up some money to option a couple of properties to build shopping centers on, okay? Then one day I'm sitting in my office, which is in the basement of one of this man's shopping centers, so pretty basic office. My future partner walks in the door. He's working actually on a big land development in the Bay Area that actually belonged to Mobil Oil Company. Okay, so he was doing the marketing there. So he walks in the door and we just had a good conversation.
Yep.
And then he came back to me and he said, I've got a project that I know it's a housing project, not a retail project, housing. And he said, the person who has the option to buy it. I know him, and he knows his construction. Do you know how to finance it?
Oh, yeah.
And I said, well, yes.
Yeah, you had a great, finance
And you
plan.
had again. So I raised the money to do the project, and that's how we started. So it was, and then and then that becomes it, because this was in the late 70s now. Okay, so in the late 70s, U.S. was going through big inflation. We had a Federal Reserve bank guy came in, Volcker, who had to deal with inflation, but raised interest rates to where bank loans were up at like 20% per annum. Okay.
Yeah.
So we had a couple of housing projects underway, and I do not have a particularly high opinion of banks. The bank we had, they really squeezed us, because we had a project that was selling, and they would refuse to then finance the next phase. Okay.
Okay.
And so they really ate up all our equity money that we had in the project. So that was really not very good.
So some part of the project was done, and then for the next phase, they were the interest rates were up, and then
Yeah, well, because when you're building homes in a lot of the USA, you're building what's called a subdivision. So you're building, say, 100 homes.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you typically build some models to show, okay, and then you build your first 10 houses, and so basically, typically with a bank, you'll be under contract, not necessarily have closed the sale, but you have contracts to sell half of the first 10, and then they let you go with the next 10, and then you have to wind up with a staggered arrangement of closings and contracts of sales to go forward, right? Which is reasonable.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't. We had it all done, and they would not then finance the next phase. And I think they did that because they had financial difficulties themselves.
Yep.
We had equity in there, and so they ate up the equity. So then we're really in trouble. So the way we dealt with that was we sold our shopping centers. Okay. So
Okay. When was this? Which 19th, 1970s?
No, this is 82, 83, something like that. Maybe 81, maybe 80, 81. And then, again, so this is the swings and out. So then in 83, everything starts.
Picking up, yeah.
Okay. And so we wound up then mainly doing home building after that, rather than the retail, because we'd sold the retail we had to keep ourselves. So these are all things you have to adjust to. I mean, you can't be too attached to any one
Absolutely.
thing. You have
Yeah.
to be willing to change. But I don't think you should ever do things where you, what should we say, where you do things that are not, I'm going to say not honest, right? I think sometimes when you get under pressure, there is a lot of, I mean, pressure is very, very difficult. And sometimes the way out seems to be doing something that's not totally upright, okay? So I think if you're in a business and you have other people's money in there, which you typically would, you have to approach it as a fiduciary and really say, no, I am the steward of that person's money. That's more important than mine. I think I don't know, but that would be my belief. Okay.
The person whom you met for the partner that you had,
Right.
so is he the same guy that you talked about, the Chinese US guy?
No. So this was in my earlier life, my real estate career. Okay. And so I actually had this partner, Jim Seva was his name. And then he actually brought aboard our construction partner, whose name is Greg Erickson. And so that went on. We dissolved that business in the early to mid 1990s. Okay.
Okay.
So I then started another home building company that went maybe from, I don't know, 1997 to 2007, something like that. But being in the Bay Area, I had also got interested in doing, venture capital investing.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that, not not picking out individual investments, but investing with funds that were basically, it was with actually the bank that, or an affiliate of the bank that went belly up last year, Silicon Valley Bank. Okay, Silicon Valley Bank. They had a company, Silicon Valley Capital, that was affiliated with the bank. They had very strong relationships with all the major VC firms: Sequoia, Mayfield, Andreessen Horowitz, New Enterprise Associates.
Got it. Yeah.
You're attempting that. So they had a deal where they were doing a fund-to-funds deal with them. So that was something that was potential for a relatively small investor to come in. You didn't have to have multiple millions of dollars. You could make a commitment of, $1 million that would go in over a 3-year period, something like that. So, so that was a good business for a while. But I was uncomfortable with that as it got bigger and bigger, because now, as you know, they have like these $1 billion.
Yeah.
I don't like that. So, so then I met my Han guy. He's a Singaporean, now a U.S. citizen, but Han, Chinese ethically. So I met him several years ago, and I wound up doing some individual projects with him. Okay. And then, so as I was exiting the real estate business, I've wound up keeping the retail part going. I have a partner there by the name of George Arcey. George does all the day-to-day stuff. I'm, financial partner and help him work strategy. And so we redevelop old shopping centers. That's what we do, because the old shopping centers in trouble. You can buy them for less than it costs to build them. So you can put tenants in there relatively low rents. Okay, so that's a simple business. But it's not simple. It's quite complicated, but it's a business I know, and that is.
When did you start this? Like,
that we've been 10 years ago, maybe something like that. Okay.
2015 or something.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then, but then with Doug Tien, the Han Chinese Singaporean guy, he'd also come up through commercial banking, but he'd done a lot of work with VC guys, and he'd had a history. Originally, he'd done some company formations in Germany, which he still has, but the Germans don't approach things the way the Americans do. They typically don't move to a liquidity event. They kind of wind up with everything being a family business that they stick with.
Okay.
There's nothing right. It's just so he's sort of in there, but they're growing in value, but they don't. You're not getting anything out of them, right?
Yeah.
So he wound up then winding up doing some business, taking like American technology to China. Okay. That is fraught with it's become more and more difficult. Okay, because. I don't want to be too critical of Chinese, but they tend to cut corners. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, okay. Maybe not in making the cars, and maybe not with some of it, but with a lot of things that are like that. So, so now we have this. So the latest thing we came up with is this company I think I told you about, which we have a really first-in-class bet. We have I think it's unique. We haven't found anybody else has a manufacturing system for drugs like we do, okay?
Yeah.
Basically, so it's a completely new approach, because all existing production is what's called batch processes, like scaled-up laboratories. This is a continuous flow system where we can monitor the quality of the product as it's being produced. And we don't use water, and we don't use solvents, and we don't use resin, so we're not polluting things, right? So that's that bit. And then we have this oxygenation molecule, and that's interesting because it's a biologic, okay, and you cannot patent biologics. Okay. But you can get what's called a patent by process. So since we're producing the biologic in this unique way, it is patentable to where nobody else can produce it.
Okay.
So we have an interesting market position with that, and which is because we don't have a huge budget. I mean, to go for human use, it's like you're talking about something at the $200-300 million level.
Yeah.
We're just going veterinary, so we have our plant built. We're in our last capital raise for these what they call single-use technology units. We'll put 4 of those in the facility.
These manufacturing plants are in the US?
Yes, it's just a plant. I mean,
Okay.
but I mean, I don't know how many there are in India, but there'll be big number in India.
Yeah.
But they're all over the world. It's not just in
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're so and so the things you face are that with the manufacturing system, you face a lot of inertia with existing producers, where you have they have big investment in these rather extensive production facilities, and their innovation people are typically tied into something that they have developed over time. So they're a bit threatened when you come in with something
new. Yeah.
And I'm sure you're encountering that in things that you do, right?
Yeah.
It's always
It takes time. Yeah.
right. It takes time. So we have that, but we're working now on something between a university, I'm going to say a drug inventor. I can't tell you the name because we're in confidential, but it would be the equivalent of a Pfizer. So these people have developed a number of biologics that they are unable to purify to the required level. Okay. And they don't do the production. They pass it out, but they don't have anybody who can do the appropriate purity level. So we're in conversation with them, and then that would mean maybe that there would be a plant built for their production, or we might do trial production in our plant.
Got it.
Just to get proof of system kind of thing.
How is it absolutely to manage multiple businesses, and then how do you figure out how much time to give to which business, and then at times it would be tough, right? Multiple businesses having different you can say requirements and things like that. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's a very interesting question, right? Part of it is because I am not in the day-to-day operation of the business, right? So I don't have to spend I'm going to say I don't have to spend maybe I should be spending more time with them. That would always be the thing, right? I'm making a judgment. The real estate activity is very it's a very established business. It's been going on for a long time.
Yep.
So it
requires you to put your input. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't take that much. It's almost like sort of a template kind of.
Yeah. And then how did you figure out this thing? You mentioned Sears, right? So they were kind of having thousands of stores in the beginning, or hundreds of stores?
Hundreds of stores.
Yeah, hundreds of stores in the US. And then recently I saw they have in single digits.
I don't know. No, I think they're probably more, but I don't know. Actually, I've forgotten how many they have because it's a while since I looked. But basically, when their retail business got closed down, they decided they were going to become a real estate developer. They were planning on redeveloping these stores themselves originally. They got a big loan from Berkshire Hathaway, from Warren Buffett's company.
Yep.
And they got that in about 2020, just before COVID. Yeah, it was 2019. Their timing was way off. Just unfortunate for them. So they wound up then with the loan came due, maybe I forget about the time. So they had to change strategy to where they were selling these stores.
Okay. Yeah. And then
So we bought that one. And they've still got some, but they don't, again, it's because it's not totally homogenous. I went and looked at, there's a very well-to-do suburb in the Los Angeles called Santa Monica, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And there is a Sears store there that's absolutely empty, okay? But it has a very different floor plan than this one we bought. The floors are really huge, and I don't know quite why they're so big. And so it doesn't work to split it up into the kind of things that we see as being in the market. So you have to, you've got to go through the market. You've got to go through because basically the way they've had them priced is it's like almost the same price per square meter, per square foot for every store. And some of them are in an area where it's not a good market, right?
Absolutely.
So they haven't been, I think.
They should be adjusting the prices according to the places, right?
Well,
I think so.
I mean, for us, we look at it like that because we have characteristics we're looking for about it, right? And to where, because then, you've got to look at, what the rents are you can get, how long it's going to take you to, to get it rented, those kind of. So, if in some markets you're just not going to be able to do it. You either can't get the rent, or it's going to take you too long. So, that's all.
I get it. And then in 1990s or something, you got started with got started along with the VCs to invest in different companies and things like that. So it was around the dot-com bubble.
It was actually the year 2000. Okay. And again, I made probably a bad decision there. I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to invest in every fund that they come up with, because my notion was I would build a ladder of funds, and that as one fund started paying off, it would be financing, it would be some of the proceeds coming out of one fund would then be able to go into another fund, so you'd have an ongoing investment arrangement, right? So I was very anxious with the Dotcom, but I really thought I shouldn't be investing, but I did. Okay, that particular fund, it took forever to go through it, and it came out. It didn't come out exactly. It didn't make any money, but I think it came out at -1%. I mean, so it's more or less break even. So if you look at that, it wasn't. If you factored in return on alternatives, I didn't do well on that one. But most of the others I've hit. If you look at internal rate of return terms, you're getting somewhere between 15 and 20% internal rate of return. Okay. Now that's
this was on a period of
So those things typically are 10, 15 years. So I mean, compared to what you could do in a market, a stock market, a public, they're illiquid, right? Yeah. And you're in there for a long term because you're on a partnership interest or an LLC interest that you can't really sell, right? So it's really liquid. On the other hand, they are not. They're really diversified investments in the pool, right? So there's some amelioration of risk there with that. And then the other thing you have to say about them is, that's why I used internal rate of return. I think in the stock market, you hear that you're getting 8%. Okay. Okay. Which, of course, you are not, because they keep, the index keeps changing, right? They take something out and put something right. Okay. But let's say it's 8%. I mean, I don't want to be persnickety. So I think with the VC funds, that I'm not sure that get that going forward with the $1 billion funds. Okay. But that's what I've seen historically. So I think that when you look at that, you say, okay, I'm getting maybe 15% internal rate of return versus 8%. So it's like, okay, I'm taking more risk. I've got something illiquid, but it's not bad. On the other hand, if you're looking at your own business, which you will be doing, and which I did, I mean, obviously you should be doing better than that, right?
Yeah, of course. As compared to the fund you are investing.
So I think, and the difference really is when you're doing your own business, obviously you're concentrating your investment. I mean, when you're doing the stock market thing or a fund thing, you're getting diversification. When you're doing your business, both your time
Yeah, absolutely.
and your money.
Money and that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. But I don't think that's wrong. I mean, I just think it's something you need to be conscious of, shall we say, right?
Yeah. So, and then like, yeah, moving on, like, how was the financial crisis of 2008 for you? Like, was there something different that happened, or like you were already ready for it?
Um, well, I knew it was coming.
Okay.
Okay, I did not know exactly when, because
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
okay. I have excuses for why I did badly with that particular downturn as opposed to other, because I'd lived through 3 or 4. I knew how to live through downturns, right?
Yeah.
I thought that particular downturn would be bigger than all the others I dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
I did not necessarily think it would be as long as it was.
Okay.
'Cause
How long did it?
Well, the recovery took a long time. I mean, it was like
3-4 years?
yeah, for real estate, I think it went down even before the rest of the market went down. Because I would say we saw the real estate collapse in like 2007. Okay.
Yeah, the
And the actual
banks going down and
yeah, and the failure of Lehman, I think, was in the
2008 or something.
2008 or 2009. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what I remember, we already were working on coming out of a recovery then. We had a project that we had put together, and we had Oaktree, which is one of the funds from Los Angeles, coming up to do their final look at this project
Okay.
before they went ahead with the investment in it. Okay. And they were coming up the day, whatever was it Black Friday, Black Thursday, whatever it was called. Okay.
Yeah.
And they called up, we're not coming up today, we'll talk with you guys in a week. And that was done, gone, right? So I think the actual recovery, I mean, it went on in the sort of this depressed state up through maybe 2015 even. I mean, it was 4, 5, 6 years really of this things really being very difficult to put together and sort of bumping along, and people not, I mean, there were all kinds of projects we tied up, and we keep going out looking to get them done. And
Yeah, I think initially it started with the real estate thing, right? Like the banks were giving out loans on zero interest basically, and then all those people not being able to pay the loan. So it started in 2007, and then as you mentioned, it continued, and then 2008-9 when the Lehman Brothers, the bank came down.
right, yeah,
Then again it
right.
kind of.
But we actually saw it happen even before that, because we were seeing it in the sales activity in a house. Okay, so
But the sales activity would be up into 2006 or something, right? Because like, which basically escalated till 2007, and then it went down.
well, of course, I'm not remembering, so I don't remember the exact time,
Yeah.
but I do remember that we were seeing that real estate activity was really slowing down before that. It was just more difficult to get the places financed. There were all kinds of things happening. Okay, so for me, I would say no. So I saw coming, but if I look back and try to analyze, I say number one, I did not know how to hedge
Against that, yeah.
right? So that was my ignorance, if you will, right? Okay. And then I had, over the previous couple of years, I'd broken a couple of rules I had. So basically, I think I told you this, we had used up all our bank lines of credit for doing projects, and we'd started another project, and a new bank came in, and they said, okay, you've got to guarantee the first couple of loans. Stupid. Shouldn't have done it. Should have said no, but I did it. And then we were also having difficulty acquiring land for projects in the Bay Area. And I had, again, one of our other rules had been we're not going to go out into, because when you get out into what's called the Central Valley of California, there's a lot, but it's just a different world out there. So we're also not going to go out there. Well, we did go out there.
Why it's Like,
Well, it's like, so the U.S. is not like, I mean, there's a lot of vacant land in the U.S. Okay? The Bay Area has very particular geography which constrains the land, okay?
okay.
And then you have very active populations that don't like change in their community, so it's very difficult to get, they come up with all kinds of rules that prevent you getting a new project, okay? So it's very difficult to get things approved, and it's difficult to find land,
Okay, okay.
okay? Now, if you go to Texas or Oklahoma, it's flat and endless. There's always another piece of land, and there's a whole different approach to it. But then you don't get prices moving up in the way that you do in California, right? So it's a different world, right?
Got it. Yeah, like that was a great talk around the tech and the and your, yeah, basically your life, how it went across different domains and things like that. I would like to touch upon the nomad culture that is there, and then currently, if you see in network school as well, like we have so many people, and then they love traveling, and then I heard some interesting stories from you as well about your traveling to different places, and then like, yeah, I would like to know more.
I don't know how to describe it. I always wanted to see different places, different peoples.
Like you get to learn so much from people from all around the world if you like, yeah, basically talk to them and then, yeah, share ideas with them.
Yes,
So
but some people don't have that
privilege,
desire,
yeah.
right? Or it's not even, I mean, some people just don't care to, right? I mean, they're very happy where they are, right?
Absolutely.
So some of it is those things. And it's a question, I have no idea why it is I have that. I think partly it's because I'm, what you say, I'm a bit of a dreamer and a romantic, you know?
Okay.
So I read a lot, I imagine a lot, and so I love getting into a different atmosphere. And I also love sort of putting myself in, imagining myself in a different time. So when you go to the places of ancient culture, you do in India and you do, say, in Egypt and stuff like that, it's, oh, here I am. Or even when I go back to England, when I go hiking a lot, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm walking on a path here where some pilgrims walked 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
It's, you can, I mean, obviously, you're not imagining the world in its creation because that would have been a very fiery thing. But it's sort of, you imagine it in a sort of, maybe in a sense of sort of paradise, right? The unspoiled world, right? And you get out there in nature, for example, and it feels like an unspoiled world, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and there are other places where there are monumental glories, like you know, you go to the Taj Mahal, right? I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yep. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. So like, when did you actively start traveling, or was it like because you had all of these businesses running, and then so like, yeah.
Well, when the kids were growing up, we didn't travel a lot. We'd typically go see my parents, you know, or we'd bring my parents over and rent them a place to stay. And but a lot of times we went back to England, and then the main traveling we did, because, you know, for kids, whatever, to be visiting the family, it's a long flight and a bit of a trek. So we'd head down to the south of France afterwards, where you could be on the beach and have some fun, you know. But we did with the kids. I'll tell you. Here's a story. We went to St. Petersburg in Russia about the time, just shortly after the fall of the Soviet Union, and we went around the Hermitage, which is the big palace in St. Petersburg, right? And you go through, I don't know, 500 rooms, all with this very elaborate. So I'm getting pissed off at my two youngest boy, so that's because I think I am not paying attention,
Okay.
right? Um, and at the end of the tour, the guide actually asked them a couple of questions, and they'd been, they had actually been observing what was happening. They looked like they're not paying attention.
Okay.
They're paying attention, right? That
Okay.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then more recently, I had one of my grandsons who asked me to organize a World War II tour of Europe.
Okay.
Well, you can't organize a tour of the whole World War,
Yeah.
but we started in England and we went through the Normandy landings. We worked ourselves across France. We worked ourselves into Germany, and we wound up in Berlin. Okay.
Okay.
And
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Like,
yeah, pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic because then you're with, we had all the, well, not all, most of the kids and grandkids were there, so it was like good family thing, but it was very, just really felt really good. And then you have surprises again. My two youngest sons were in the U.S. Marine Corps, and they were aware, which I certainly wasn't, that my wife's father's brother was killed in the Second World War in what was called the Battle of the Bulge. So he was killed in January of 1945, almost the end of the war, and therefore was buried somewhere in Luxembourg. I had no clue, okay?
Okay.
But we've gone through that area in Luxembourg. My daughter, who's with us at that point, has heard about it from her brother, and so we go to that cemetery, right? And it was very, it was really moving because we get there and there's a guide who takes us out to the tombstone because she knows where it is. And you find these amazing things that people do. So she had a little canister with her of sand that they brought from the beach at Normandy.
Okay.
They have a big shipment of sand that goes, and so she pours some water, makes it wet. The person's name and rank is incised on this white stone cross. She rubs it in there so that, well, actually, she gives it to my daughter to rub in so the name stands out, okay?
Okay.
And we have a little ceremony there, okay? So then we're all wandering off around the day, okay? I've got my two grandsons, they may be a little bit, 21, 22, okay? Got three grandsons that age, okay? The two that are brothers, amazing. They went over there. I didn't see it. My daughter saw this. They sang the Star-Spangled Banner for their deceased great uncle, right? And then my other grandson, she catches him. He's gone over there. He's kneeled down and he's doing a prayer in front of it. And, you think of young guys your age, you're not into...
Not that spiritual or things like that.
Yeah, not emotional or not moved. So it was like, wow. I mean, that's to me the kind of experience you get when you travel. Things happen. Surprises, wonderful surprises.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then eventually, like, it's a small word, and then, like, it's sometimes
Yeah, it is. It's a small world. Yeah.
sometimes, like, strange things happen, and then sometimes, like, pretty, like, you just can't imagine what you can witness.
No.
So, yeah.
And as I told you, I mean, I was from, you go to India, things are very warm and friendly and vibrant and lively, right? But the same thing is true in Iran. I talk a lot about Iran because people think Iran, everyone's scared to go to Iran, right? But you go to Iran and you walking down street, Iranians a lot, they'll sit out with a blanket and then some grass in the middle of the street or up against a wall in a building or something. And you can't look at them. If you look at them, they want you to come over and they want to give you food and they want to take the picture with the baby. So you have to
look straight ahead.
look straight ahead, right? So, again, that's a great, great thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's at times very interesting to watch the human nature, and then like the types of people you meet around the world. So, like, Yeah, I'm sure like you would have some crazy stories around your travels across the world, as you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So
But here we have a crazy story also, right? I mean, what is happening here, I mean, I don't know how this all works out in the end, okay? I do think it brings people together in communities. How those communities will evolve or where they go or how they, that's a lot more speculative to me. I don't know,
yeah,
but the people here are really varied. They're a very interesting man, okay? And we're sitting there with Adam, who is quite a character. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So, yeah, and they're all, what should we say? I haven't run into anybody here who is just sitting back waiting to get something good happen for them.
yeah,
Everybody here is working to do something they think is good, and
yeah.
so that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, like I love how people are basically getting out of their comfort zone and then trying out new things. And then so yeah, basically it was very difficult for me as well to like talk to people, and then now I'm doing these things to basically improve myself. And then like I saw people here creating content or like building applications, like non-tech guys building tech tools like AI tools using the latest you can say all the models that we have and things like that. So it's like pretty fascinating to see how the world is moving, and then how this place like network school, like places like these are basically empowering people to do much more than people used to do earlier, going to a college and then getting a job and then yeah.
Yes.
So I think yeah, this is quite interesting to see. And then uh yeah, so how did you come to know about network school? And then
I couldn't tell you. I don't remember.
oh yeah.
No, I don't. I think it's because I sort of I just again that's the cure. I just look at a lot of stuff. I look at stuff online. I read a lot. I mean, it's all
No,
So, like even now this afternoon, I started reading. Usually I read biographies and histories.
yeah, okay.
Okay, and then lately I had been trying to get back into reading a bit of philosophy, which got talked about at the table this evening.
Okay.
But I find I mean, Plato and Kant and anybody up through the 19th century is pretty easy to read, and it's very general, and they keep coming up with new definitions of words, but it's kind of a bit sort of mushy, right? But it's easy. When you get to Bertrand Russell and Wittgenstein, people like that, it's beyond my ability to read it, okay? But I did want to get back lately into some of the economic thinkers like Hayek and stuff like this, okay? So I've been trying to do that. But then I also realized I hadn't been having time to read novels, and I have real difficulty with novels because when I read them, I think, why did I read that? It's I mean, but in any event, I saw a good review of a novel called I think it's called Reading Lolita in Tehran.
Okay.
So I started reading that this afternoon online, and it was written by an author who was in the Soviet Union and pretty oppressed guy, and he was writing his books through the 1930s, 1940s. Lolita was a very shocking story at the time because it's about a man really well. How do you put it? I mean, he was really like a pederast, right? He rapes a young woman. This is the novel about, okay? But in this what she immediately comes up with in this book is, okay, well, that's a representation of how people are treated in autocratic states, right?
Yes.
I said, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So it's quite imaginative in where it goes, and it ties into a really major 20th century writer. And you say, okay, this is...
Got it.
And I'll give you another one. Okay, in my youth, when I was your age, out came, you know what, you heard the book 1984? Do you know the book 1984?
Yeah, no.
Okay, so George Orwell was an English writer. He was very left-wing guy. He fought in the Spanish Civil War. And then he wrote this book when he realized the terrible things going on in Russia. It's called 1984, and it's about a very controlling state that sees what it's able to observe people all the time. They can't do anything wrong, and it has a thing called, I think, double speak, where they're able to every truth is turned into a lie, and every lie is turned into truth. Right? So it's a really philosophical book. Okay. It's a really well written book. I commend it to you to read. 1984. Okay.
So
well, somebody now here I just read this a month ago. They wrote a book with the title Julia. Okay. Mm-hmm. Julia is a character in 1984.
Okay.
And so this is 1984 from Julia's standpoint as opposed to from the standpoint of it. Okay. Now, I think that's pretty cool. That gets me kind of going. Yeah. But on the other hand, I'm not sure it contributes to, say, any progress in business. It's just something that's interesting.
But then, it's sometimes like you tend to read some, you can say, fictional stuff, which is like fascinating at times. So
it can be very imaginative, and I think it does give. I mean, I would say like sort of 1984, although it's fiction, it was a great sort of way of presenting autocracy. And he wrote another book called Animal Farm. It was about all the animals on the farm, and everybody was equal until the pigs decided they should be more equal, the more equal among the equals. Right? So again, that's a sort of a satire on
the existing stuff happening.
Yeah. So I think you have to read it. By the way, another one. Here we go. This is one for you. Okay. There's another book called Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Okay. This is the notion that you raised the children in test tubes so that you genetically determined personality. So he broke it into three. There were the ruling class, the professional class, and the working class, right? But because they were raised in the test tube, they were each comfortable with being in that class. There was no social stress or strain.
When was this written? Like
1935, 1940.
Okay.
Something like that. I mean, so you wouldn't be able to, maybe so he's not got it working in a good genetic way, right? But it's okay. And then one of the people there, okay, maybe has some mutant gene, okay, and he wants to do something different, so he goes off and he finds what they call somewhere in Arizona, he finds a wild person and brings them back into this society, right? Okay. So,
got it. Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, I think we face those kind of issues today, right? Where you have the China one-child policy. You have all kinds of. We're looking now, right, at people being able to select the characteristics of
the person. Yeah. The
person. We certainly see population ratios changing because people are deciding not to have. So all that it's happening genetically rather than sort of in test tubes where but it's there.
Yeah, it's happening. Yeah. Yeah, it's like you can basically. Yeah, things like spaceships and things like that are already written in books centuries ago. So and these things are actually happening now. So it's quite fascinating to read such books.
Did you have comic books when you were a kid?
Not really. No. Comic books. There were some of them, but then they were fictional ones, more of like cartoons and stuff like that. So yeah,
and there seems to be, but now online it seems to be there's a lot of the sort of Minecraft and all these things, they're basically the equivalent of sort of comic books, I think. But I think you always have that thing about the the good people and the bad people, the above the ground, the below the ground people. Because I used to get a comic when I was a kid, and it had a character who went to, I think, went to Venus. Okay.
Okay.
And in Venus there was a race of people called Trees, and the Trees were kind of bad. They were green, they were kind of nasty, and then there was some sort of more human-looking people who, I think, I forget who lived above ground, who lived below ground, but it was about the
tensions between them. Yeah.
the tension between them.
No, right? Yeah.
Well,
I
if
think-
you're going to be doing this, I mean, you actually are rather good at interviewing, I have to say. I'm pretty impressed.
I don't think so. But yeah, I'm learning. Yeah.
No, you're good.
Okay.
But obviously, you can always improve. So I would commend this particular interview to you. And it's a good interview to watch. It's Dick Cavett,
Okay.
and it's Richard Burton's the person he interviews, and it's on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay. And he interviews him actually over 2 nights. So maybe it's like 2 hours altogether. So you wouldn't necessarily want to watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's really good. But so yeah, you could fine tune what you're doing, but actually your basic approach, you're very relaxed, and you've got a good grasp and continuity there to what you do. It's also
So like I think it's also something like you are very, you can say, you have so many stories, and you are kind of like, so I've done 2 interviews in the past, and then so in this one I felt like we were kind of continuing everything, and then like only at times when I went to check is it working or not. Apart from that, it went pretty smooth. It was also because like you were very we can say prompt with all the answers, and then like yeah, you had so much to share. So, and yeah, that's why I think it's much more relaxing for me as well to be chill in a chill state.
okay, good. Okay, that's good. Yeah,
So-
yeah. No.
So
Well, okay. So I accept your humility, but but it's still like I want to commend you because I think it's
but then I think like the place I'm lacking stuff is that I actually don't read much books, which is something like which I want to like get eventually into reading more stuff, because of course it actually gives you much more insights about the things that are coming in the future, or like if you are more into like, so any topic that you want to learn about, you can basically, yeah, I want to get into a habit of reading and completing books.
I'm I'm a real believer in reading, and particularly in reading history, which a lot of people don't see any value in particular, but I think it's really important. And then reading, not just all the sort of social media stuff, but listening to people who are significant thinkers today.
Yep.
So, for example, an example I would say that, well, he's recently deceased. So Henry Kissinger, okay, who was Secretary of State, I forget his, he was National Security Advisor under Nixon, I think, when they opened up to China, and then he became Secretary of State. Well, he has a book out called On China, okay, which covers all his negotiations with China.
Oh, there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's again, I don't know enough to know how accurate his assessments are.
Okay. Yeah.
But there's a really powerful intellect there at work that's analyzing that situation.
Yeah.
And he particularly gets into his individual interviews with Mao or Zhu, and then gives his interpretation of what it is. So, for example, he gives a thing in there where one room is kind of funny. He says that the Chinese were going through a period where they weren't being particularly in such a good relationship with the Russians. Okay, they were concerned about what the Russians were doing on the Chinese border and stuff like that. So, so they were kind of coming apart a bit, right? And that was partly why Kissinger did the opening of China, because they saw there was a bit of a fracture.
Tension between US and China and Russia, and then US was helping in getting the legacy. So
So real politics, right? I mean, so so Kissinger gets in with Mao, and Mao says, "Oh yeah, the Russians sent the Romanian foreign minister to see me." Well, he doesn't say said the Romanian foreign minister, because the Romanians were seen as the least affiliated with Russia, right? So so Mao figured
this route, yeah.
Okay. So then he says to Kissinger, and I'm a very generous negotiator. He said, yes. I told him that, I forget, it was that we could live this way for 9,000 years before we did anything, right, with that. Okay? And so then the Romanian ambassador split. And then he said, and you know what? But then I told the Romanian ambassador, in consideration of what he was telling me, I would make it only 8,000 years.
Okay.
Right? When it was 900 years later. So he said, you see how generous I am. Okay. So Kissinger said, okay, he didn't want to tell me he was going to be real tough with me. He didn't want to tell me so he told me that basically in that language that, hey, you USA may think you're really strong, but at that point China had really they'd gone through this chaos, right? I mean, they had no military, no anything. But it was like, hey, China, we can absorb, we can always go back you can come and attack us at the border, but we can always go back into land, and we can just wait you out no matter what, right?
Yeah.
So those kind of things that you get.
Some things are around like politics that you get to learn from these books.
Yeah. And there's other things that are very, like I remember when I went up to Ladakh, there used to be all the Silk Road trails that went up from Ladakh over the Himalaya into China and out to and there were all these sort of walls there along the trail where people would put, there were stones that had engravings on them.
Okay.
Right? They told me what they. I'm trying to remember what they were. So it's like, wow, this is extraordinary. These stones have been stacked up here.
So many years. Yeah.
So years, but then the Chinese just shut it off. It just doesn't happen now. Maybe technologically also that those trails would be just for mules and things. So it happens differently now. But on the other hand, they did actually shut it off, right? So
yeah. And you also mentioned you have this thread from
I went to Bali, okay, and I wanted to go. I'd never been up to the north end of the island. I went up to the north island. I stayed in a little village, and the young guys there, they had a name for it. They were doing a garbage pickup.
Okay.
Because people drop plastic and garbage, the same as in India, right?
Yeah.
And so I just joined them to pick up garbage all over the village. And so they gave me this, okay? And I thought, it's kind of getting pretty warm now, but I thought, I like this.
Oh, yeah. Also, you were telling something about Hare Krishna temple that you went to.
Yeah, I can look it was somewhere in Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
Okay. And it wasn't a Hare Krishna temple. It was just that we went with a group. And as often the case in India, massive crowds in the street, right? It's not to be first. So it was this big festival. So we were there during the day. And I remember during the day they had, the elephants come by, the god in the chariot with the huge wheel, right? All the stuff, okay? Yep. So that was fantastic, right? Okay. And then that evening they did a thing where they had these, like a palanquin, like really, really long poles
Yep.
with a bunch of priests, carrying it on their shoulders,
Yep.
and the god in the middle, just displayed. And they were carrying it around the town and bringing it to the temple. Okay, so we were.
Was it Rameshwaram? Do you remember the exact place?
I'll look it up. I don't remember the name.
Okay.
And so we were in a building right across the entrance to the temple,
Okay. Yeah.
and there were some Hare Krishna guys there. Okay, but so they come up with this, the god on the palanquin, okay? And people in the street are going wild. And then they start, these people are packed together, and then this thing which is like 30 meters long,
Yeah.
they start spinning it in circles. And I'm thinking somebody's going to get their head chopped off. I mean, it all worked, but it was so, and they had the flaming torch. It was everything.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to one of those?
I haven't been to like Chennai, so not that one. But then I've been to Odisha, and then they have their there's this temple known as Jagannath Puri.
Okay.
So they have similar rituals there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the religious observances are quite interesting in India. I mean, they're very different from the Christian ones. So I've been to one where I went to one temple where they had the pouring of the milk on the Brahma bull.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's just it's beautiful, right? And I've been to another one where they had a big. They said it was a ruby, right? They opened up the temple door, you saw the ruby there, and then they closed it again. They were just with the priests in there, but a huge old stone temple, and just
Got it. Are you spiritual as well, or like?
I sort of resist saying. I mean, I'm not. I don't belong to any organized religion, but I do go to when I go to. England, particularly other European countries, in England they have a very nice service which is called Evensong, which is a sung service, beautiful singing with good singers, and you can go into one of the churches. We had beautiful structure, stained glass windows, the lights coming through, the choir sings. You're sitting in a beautiful area with wooden pew. I mean, I sort of, you feel spiritual when you're doing.
Yeah, when you're in such an environment. Yeah.
Right. And certainly when I've been to things in India, I mean, people, they clearly feel that. It is a human need that's existed throughout history, right?
Yeah.
But I'm resistant to the belief that there is a superior being that is in any way guiding or observing my life.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think like at times when it's very challenging, like I'm also like not something like I don't usually pray to God, but then whenever like something good happens or whenever something bad happens, then I'm very grateful to God, like in a way, like
Okay.
then I'm like, it's not something like when I'm sad or when things don't happen, then only I remember God. It's at times when things go well with time, and then like I'm grateful to God in some sense, and then when things are not going that well,
You get some help. Yeah.
then
Yeah. So maybe I'm arrogant. I don't know. I don't quite know how to look. I think. I mean, I do care about people, so I guess
that's the ultimate thing. Like it's I think people are more in India specifically. I see they are so much into the spiritual stuff that they actually skip like doing the actual things which are required. For example, caring for their family, or like they are spiritual, but then they don't even care for their parents in a way.
Yes.
So like it's actually useless if you are doing such a thing. So like service to the people around you is actually service to God, I think. And then so actually
Yeah. And I mean, I think I don't know how the words work in the various languages of India. But in English, God, I mean, good is God, right? I mean, you're working towards the good, and the good is, in a sense, God.
Yep.
So it's, I think that works. And actually, by the way, again, if you ever read Stephen Hawking's books,
I have,
okay.
found that.
So I forget what he called history. Well, but his notion is that basically religions have been a way of trying to understand the universe we live in, right? And that each new generation has come up with an improved conception. Well, okay. I mean, I think that's actually pretty brilliant, right? But on the other hand, it's not everybody's answer or feeling,
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah. But I think we should definitely be, we could use a lot more good in the world. Let's put it that way. I think we
Yeah. And then, do you have any final words for the people around here in the network school?
A final word. I think I have to be very grateful and appreciative of the life that I have had and the life I'm having. I have been very fortunate to have been born into a family that was very supportive. They were lovely to me, my family, right? And then, although I was born in a period of war, basically my life has not been affected by war and violence as it has been in so many parts of the world.
Yep.
So I think I've been a very lucky individual, and I've had some bad things happen, but mainly I've been a lucky individual, and that is true even of being here, right? I mean, how lucky can I be? Because I mean, you need to have actually a sort of mass interview with seeing this whole group that's here, and that God, I mean, it's not just that there's energy and positivity and people want to be inventive. They're very warm and nice to each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is how it should be everywhere as well.
Yeah.
Like, some kind of a positive sum game, as we say. Like people helping each other to grow. That's the best feeling that you can get. So like,
Yeah.
the
Really. So there we go. And that comes down to our little interview. I mean, I don't know how to say it. It's just lovely to be here with you, talking with you. It's a beautiful thing.
yeah.
So you'll go on from strength to strength now,
Yeah.
right?
And then I'm planning to improve each and every time that I do it. And
Yeah. Okay, that's good.